Hey Ivan, this is Jonathan from 402 Pitching Academy. Just wanted to walk you through the things that I'm seeing from you mechanically. I'm going to start by just playing through this at full speed. Okay, so when I look at pitching mechanics, I really try to keep them as simple as possible. There's a ton of things that are involved in the throw in terms of even arm angles and trunk positioning and lower half, back leg, front leg, your feet. Okay, there's a ton of things to look at, and sometimes it can almost be overwhelming. And so I really like to try and keep things simple when I walk players through this. Okay, I like to look at the lift, how we lift our leg, and how we drift. So lift and drift. Then we have drop. Then we have block, which is when the front foot lands. So drop is how we drop into the back leg and move sideways down the mound. And then we have block, which is where we're at in front foot strike, and then rotate and release. And so there's a ton of different little things to look at within that, but those within those phases. But this is like, if we're looking at it overall, those are kind of the main principles I like to look at. So let's start with the lift. So during our lift, I like to see guys stay nice and tall on that back leg. I don't want to see them stay nice and in control. I want to see that back foot stay nice and flat. So you're in a pretty good spot there during your lift. I do like how you stay tall on your back leg. I also like how you create or try to keep your hips underneath you during your lift, and you're also staying closed off with your upper body and with your trunk. Okay, I like to see guys create a little bit of a C shape with their trunk during the lift. It sets their hips up in a good spot, and so you do a relatively good job of this during your lift. But then from there, things kind of go a little haywire. So during your first move, so as you start to go down the mound, you'll notice that you really sit into that back leg. Okay, it's almost like your hips go straight down. So you'll see if we looked at this directionally, if your hips are here at peak leg lift, they go almost straight down from there, almost into like this squat. So it's like a pretty serious drop. And what happens is when we go in like straight down during the lateral move of our mount, or during the lateral move of our delivery, it causes us to get really jumpy off of our back leg. So you'll see that after you go down, you really extend and jump out. So you'll notice that actually as you go into your throw and as you're starting to get yourself down the mound, like you're not even connected to the ground at this point. Like you're on the toes on the back foot, and your front foot's not even landing. And so what happens is that causes you to rotate everything at once, and you lose all of your separation, right? So we're not able to create any stretch in between in our core as our hips open and our trunk stays closed. And so because we sit, we have to jump, and then when we jump, everything rotates at once, and now essentially we're forced to throw with all arm at this point in the delivery. And then we get a little bit pushy. You'll see that you lead with your elbow, and so now your triceps taking a lot of the work. That might be why our tricep gets a little bit sore, but that's probably one of the bigger things that we'll work on. So what should it look like instead? Really, it should be we want our hips to gradually work their way down the mound, following the slope. So we don't want this like down, and then it's not so much it's not drop and drive, it's not tall and fall. You'll hear both of those. It's more of like a diagonal, like ride the slide, if that makes sense. Obviously, some guys stay a little taller, some guys squat a little lower. There's a lot of variance in it. But because of the way you sit here and then jump out of it, you're killing all your separation and then forcing yourself to throw essentially with all arm. And so I'm actually just going to stand up and kind of try and illustrate this a little bit better so you can see it. And so I know the screen is kind of small here, but let me make this just the best that I can. So what's happening is when I sit straight down, okay, so you're sitting straight down, and you still have to, I'm left-handed by the way, so this will be backwards for you. But when you you sit straight down with your hips, essentially, because that's what you're doing during this part of the delivery. So you're going straight down. Okay, you'll notice even like your back knee is relatively like stuck over your back foot. Okay, you'll also notice that it actually goes past your back toes when we look at it from behind, but it's not really, it's basically straight up and down over that back foot when you look at it from the side. And so what happens is we're sitting basically down in the squat, and so somehow we have to get ourselves towards home. And the only way that you can do it when you sit in the squat position is to extend and jump off of that back leg, essentially. And so when we extend and jump, everything has to rotate at once, right? Because we still have to get the baseball out of our hand towards home. And so you're not using your lead leg or your hips to rotate while your trunk stays closed. You're jumping and rotating all at once. And then now we're forced to throw from this position. And so we push with our arm, and we're not really using our body and our trunk to throw, if that makes sense. A couple other things that you'll notice. So because that trunk opens early, so because we are jumping off that back leg, trunk opens early. Okay, now we're starting to come off the baseball a little bit. So you'll see that we get into release, kind of this, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being super far, like tilted a little bit. Okay, but you'll notice that when you're in your throw, like your elbow is pretty far out in front of your body, which shows me that you're pushing, you're throwing like a dart, puts a lot of stress on your tricep, elbow, shoulder. You'll also notice that your arm is not necessarily in plane of rotation. So one thing we like to look for is essentially release is perpendicular with our spine. Okay, that gets our pecs, our shoulder stabilizers, everything's an optimal length if we are perpendicular with our spine during release. So for example, if you throw a sidearm, you'd be here. If you're over the top, you're here. Okay, but you're kind of like this. So now all that stress is going to these different areas of your arm that you're getting sore in. Okay, so again, none of that is necessarily fixable until you fix your initial move. Okay, so that's the thing to remember in all of this, that this part, what we're doing early in the delivery is causing all the issues here. Okay, lastly, remember we talked about block. So the lead leg's role in the delivery is to stop your forward momentum. Okay, so when that front foot lands, we don't want to see our knee continue to leak forward. And so you actually do a decent job of stopping your forward momentum as you go into your throw. But you'll notice, the one thing that I do notice is during your release, and this isn't necessarily a lead leg issue, but it's just another kind of example of how linear your delivery is, or how jumpy you are. So you'll see that as you throw, you're not really rotating around your front leg, but you're vaulting over your front leg. And so the reason I think that we're vaulting is because of this, where back here, we squat, we jump, and again, we're not rotating because everything's already rotated at this point. And then we're just like crunching forward with our trunk and with our arm in order to throw, and then we just vault over that front leg. Okay, what the front leg is supposed to do is when it lands, so it lands, it stops our forward momentum, and then this hip continues to rotate, and we continue to rotate around this hip, and that allows us to take our rotational energy and then put it back into linear energy into our trunk. Okay, so what you're doing is you're jumping, front foot is trying to stop our forward momentum, and it does relatively well, but then we're still like vaulting forward over that front leg, and we're not rotating around that front leg. So you're just losing some energy there, some rotational energy there during your throw. So I know that's kind of a lot. The big thing though, like I said, is we're not going to focus on the arm. We're not going to focus on the lead leg. We're not really going to focus on much of that until we can figure out what the back leg needs to do properly. Okay, I'll show you some video too, just so you can see kind of what things should look like, and I'll walk you through that as well. So hope you find this helpful. It's something that we're definitely going to continue to talk about and address anytime we meet and as we continue to work this off season. So again, let me know if you have any questions, but this is what we'll start with.